Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Rich. So we're going to be taking a look at the Galaxy A15 5G from Samsung today. I'm not even sure why this is around $200 US. This is a pretty cheap phone, so let's check it out. Alright, so with a quick Google search on the Galaxy A15, you can see that almost all the top results pretty much have over 8,000 positive 4.5-star reviews, with most people saying how much they love this phone. And I still can't believe it. I mean, at first, I thought this was a joke. But after using this for a while, I quickly realized this wasn't the case. I can see this phone working well for any older relatives, you know, someone that isn't too quite tech savvy, or someone like a kid or a child or anyone else that doesn't quite need an expensive smartphone for a myriad of reasons. You see, budgeted phones are super interesting to me lately because when I'm reviewing these rather than the flagship ones, I like to approach this in a more understanding fashion. I don't have high expectations and I want to see how far we came in smartphone technology. And you want to know the best feature I found out? That headphone jack, it's still very valuable. This is one of the few phones that has one. When's the last time you saw that? Anyways, I'll probably treat this as a secondary backup phone and I'm not too worried about it breaking since it's quite literally 1/5 of the price of most flagship phones out there. And I also realized the bigger picture with the Galaxy A15 is that not everyone can shell out $1,000 for a smartphone. In the United States at least, I think we're used to seeing more bigger and luxurious phones as a sign of wealth, status, and overall premium feel. Last year, the Samsung Galaxy A14 5G, which I reviewed, was the top-selling Android phone of 2023, second only to all the iPhones. These A-series phones by Samsung are designed to be accessible and enjoyable for people worldwide, so I see how they're capitalizing on that certain demographic, but really what makes this one so good, or is it just another one of Samsung's cash grab? So you see, in the past 10 years, I think smartphone technology has improved so much to the point that there's not really much left to improve, which is why you see so many phones released with such small upgrades every year. For example, we see it time and time after again with the iPhones. There's just a few things they change, like the build design, and add something like an action button or a titanium build. And actually, I will give props to Apple. They just do a really good job at hyping up things that may seem pretty ordinary and acting like they did it all by themselves and just deny the haters, deny everything that's coming at them. They have a really big ego in the phone industry because who else will? Everyone knows the iPhone. When in actuality, Android has already been doing that. But since those improvements came, these features finally get to trickle down on the small dogs, and that's how the Galaxy A15, for example, exists for such a low price. But yeah, at a glance, the A15 tricked me and my friends into thinking this was some $600 smartphone, and I'm not joking. It's made all plastic throughout except for the glass front, and in some ways, gripping this in the hand while it's naked feels pretty good. I was reviewing the A55 5G on the last video and they had an aluminum side rail all throughout. I personally felt it was a little bit too sharp in my hand, while this one felt a little bit more smoother. And this phone weighing only around 200 grams is pretty lightweight. I think the weight distribution is pretty nice all throughout. Like, I didn't feel like it was heavy when I was taking phone calls or using it during normal usage. Does it feel cheap? I mean, surprisingly, not really. The phone can stand up on its own and I think the flat side rails are comfortable. I don't know if I would personally put a case on this. I think it feels durable enough. And upon looking at this closer, you know, it's kind of a little hard to tell the difference between this and the titanium build on the iPhone 15 and the Galaxy S24. I mean, the finish on the side rails are just so nice. So on the sides where the power button and the volume rockers are, they're just raised out a little bit slightly. The power button does feel a little sneaky. Sometimes I can't really feel if it's like there per se, because the button does feel a little bit sunken in. I think from last year's A14 5G, that just screamed really cheap to me. You know, they had the little riveted plastic back and they just went with a very smooth finish here, and I really like the colorway that I chose. The 6.5-inch AMOLED display is beautiful and the text looks very sharp. The bigger screen provides a more immersive experience, and you can take this out on a sunny day and still see the screen pretty well thanks to the peak brightness setting of around 800 nits. You see, features like these in the year 2013 would freak our minds out. I mean, sure, the anti-coating glare screen is pretty bad on this. You'll have to find yourself an S24 Ultra to enjoy those benefits. Something that caught me off guard was the one and only speaker output that's coming out of this small little cutout. And I occasionally find myself blocking that port sometimes, which can get quite annoying depending on how you hold and where you put this. Though it is surprisingly loud enough to fill an entire small bedroom up. The A15 also has an expandable micro SD card storage where the SIM card tray is. And if you want to load apps onto that to free up some space on your phone, you can head into the apps menu, select the app you want to transfer, and change the storage location to the SD card. The same can be done with photos, music, and way more, which is really nice. The headphone jack also just feels very natural for a phone, and I found myself using this a lot more again whenever I wanted to connect this phone to a speaker via wire or pair this up with my Audio-Technica ATH-M50Xs. Again, to get that nice crisping sounding audio that you can't get with something like a wireless Bluetooth headphone. And I think a lot of phone manufacturers today are just really pushing for us to use those, and it's not that hard to put a headphone jack on one of these phones nowadays. I mean, come on, these phones are so big. I mean, what's the problem with it? It's been so long to see a phone that has a headphone jack. I mean, this is just so nice. Let me know in the comments below if this is something that you would like to see, or if you're still using this to this day. Now, I'm not sure how waterproof or dustproof this A15 is. I don't see any rating online, but I would probably be safe to say that it is splash resistant. Maybe in the shower or just a little bit moisture, but I wouldn't try to submerge this in any way or shape or form. Biometrics like face recognition and fingerprint ID felt very responsive. That's another thing I was pleasantly surprised about, and since this is a Galaxy phone, you get features like quick share, which allows you to easily send big files with impressive quality to any iOS or Android device. Samsung Wallet is also another great payment option service as well that's on here. So for $200, I still don't think you're missing out on much. Now, probably the question you're all wondering is, how fast is this phone? Is it going to work as fast as I need it to? And on paper, the A15 is packed with their MediaTek Dimensity 6100 Plus, and it slightly outperforms similar competitors like the Motorola Moto 5G in synthetic benchmarks, which is a $150 phone. And if you compare this to something like a flagship iPhone 15, it does look rather slow in comparison. However, in day-to-day usage, the speed and feedback while navigating across the user interface, opening apps, and consuming content was quick enough. I had to give this phone a little bit more patience, as it wasn't going to be instantaneously fast as something like the Galaxy S24 Ultra series or the iPhone, for example. The keyboard would lag just slightly behind while searching for things, and when I press icons, they may just take a slight noticeable delay, as you can see here. But if you're coming from a budgeted phone, an older phone, or something that isn't as expensive as the flagships, the Galaxy A15 really isn't all that bad. It was much more responsive than last year's A14, that's for sure. We still only have 4 gigs of RAM in here. Unfortunately, I kept the device care and management widget close by to clean up the memory as I go, so this will help allocate more space for other processes if I would be playing games or taking photos and all that. A few things I did to make this phone faster were to head into developer options, which can be turned on in the About Phone section, software information, and tapping on the build number a few times. After that, I turned the window and transition animation scale off and animated scale to 0.5, turning background processes to limit at most 4, and the A15 gained a noticeable jump in speed, and I'm not too quite sure why this isn't turned on by default. Alright, when you take this over to gaming, I played stack, which can be a little addicting yet calming depending on how high you stack these blocks up to. I had low expectations here because I thought the animations might be glitchy while playing, but it was running at a smooth, constant 90Hz refresh rate. For Dragon Ball Legends, I think the visuals look great, and the optimization here was the best, as it was running very smoothly from fancy fighting dynamics to colorful energy blasts. And lastly, for Call of Duty Mobile, the menu was noticeably laggy. I felt like there were just tons of icons and things for the games to load, but once you're past that into the game, the frame rate was pretty smooth. I did notice a few hiccups when there were more graphically intense moments, like explosions of a gas tank or heavy gunfire. And with One UI 6.1 being released for the A15 and 5G, these include new options to add images, customize the UI, share content, protect your data, manage health, and protect the phone's battery life. Unfortunately, the new software doesn't offer Galaxy AI on the A15 that it does on the newer and costlier phones. That's something to already be understood because this is not a powerful phone, and I don't think it can handle all that. And the battery life on this is pretty amazing. It does have a staggering 5000 milliamp cell, which you would think is the same on something like an S24 Ultra, but since the MediaTek CPU here barely draws that much power, it was able to last me an average of 12.5 hours of screen time, or 2.5 full days after charging. And this consisted of watching YouTube videos with high brightness, texting, taking a few calls, browsing through social media, snapping some photos, videos, and all with Wi-Fi and cellular enabled. With their adaptive refresh rate turned on, I was pleasantly surprised on how long this phone lasted, and charging this from 0 to 100 only took around half an hour with a max input of 25 watts. This phone doesn't have any wireless charging, which is sad, but that's okay. Now, the Galaxy A15 has some limitations from a photography perspective, but it still offers an enjoyable photo capturing experience. Furthermore, the pictures don't necessarily look like they were taken with a cheap phone. I was fooled with some of the results here. At this price, you're getting a 50 megapixel main camera, as well as a 2 megapixel macro shooter and a 5 megapixel ultra wide lens. I was surprised to see all these 3 lenses on here, as it gives us access to shoot photos in almost any focal length. Overall, I think the phone takes good images considering its low cost. It does well when there's plenty of light and less so when it's dark, which is typical. With some photos, I think they may look a little washed, especially when the phone is trying to express the deepness of some colors like the reds and blues, and there might be a few areas in back that are overexposed. Portrait photos seem to turn out decent enough. Much of Samsung's post-processing comes to play here and does a great job at adding bokeh and depth to the background as needed. Even while zooming into some of these photos, you can see the attention to detail the A15 captures. But using the camera app is pretty responsive too. The shutter button is fast and navigating across the modes felt peppy enough. Video can be shot at a maximum of 1080p, 30 frames per second, which I believe is good enough quality for most general people today. One major downside is the stabilization. It's not the strongest here. You do have to keep your hand pretty still when recording video on it. But what's nice is you still have options to shoot in Samsung Expert RAW, which gives you more control over the camera settings to shoot in RAW format, which works great for editing pictures in post or adjusting ISO and aperture on the fly. So after using Galaxy A15 for quite a while now, I can really see that it does embody the essence of all the practical features at the lowest price possible. It's not everything that you would expect from a $1,000 phone, but instead it offers a somewhat reliable experience. A phone is a tool, nothing more than an instrument to accomplish tasks. It does lack a lot of features that enthusiast phones would have, a little bit of a weaker processor here, and the cameras aren't the best. But for most of us, I'd say this covers like 90% of what a phone is used and made for. I mean, how many of us are actually using the 100 times zoom on the S24 Ultra on the daily, or is anyone actually using the action button and can't live without it on the iPhone 15 Pro? Would you want those features, or would you want a headphone jack? Come on now. That's a tough question. I personally would not need any of that. Just give me this port, please. That's a tough question, but anyways, I'll end the video here. Let me know what you think about the Galaxy A15 down below in the comments. I think this is a pretty stellar phone. I think it's really nice to see how far we came in smartphone technology to the point where anyone like you and me can go into a store, pick this phone up for, just 200 bucks and get started in anything that they need to do. And yeah, if I saw this phone like 10 years ago in 2014, I'd honestly be shocked. I'd be like, is this the pinnacle of smartphone evolution? It can't get any better than this. Do you think the Galaxy A15 has a valuable place in the smartphone market today? I want to hear your thoughts. Until then, this is Rich Me, and I'll see you in the next video.